Would you like to reach our film and TV review podcast audience? Do you have a product or service of interest to film and TV home consumers or followers of the entertainment industry? Have a film or show production to publicize? For affordable price plans for all budgets, get in touch and find out about our introductory advertising options. Reach our audience of film and TV viewers and visit our site contact page at filmandtvreview.com, or you can email us at business@filmandtvreview.com. Reach out today. Welcome to filmandtvreview.com. Catch the latest film, TV and streamed show reviews every week. The views and opinions expressed by the authors and those providing comments are theirs alone. They do not reflect the views, opinions or position of filmandtvreview.com or their respective parent companies or affiliates. Filmandtvreview.com makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, correctness, suitability, or validity of any information in this program and is for entertainment purposes only. Episodes may contain adult humor and language. For full terms and conditions, see filmandtvreview.com.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Film and TV Review. This is just a look back at what's happened in the last month or so. We're looking back at probably the releases mostly in November that's happened, and a bit before that, but it's been quite a busy release month. So we'll dig in, we'll go straight in. But I'm joined by our regulars, and they'll introduce themselves as we go on. But we'll start with, I think, a big release, a more recent one, is Napoleon. That's the Ridley Scott movie, and James and Richard, you saw this release quite recently. What did you think?
So Napoleon. Like I was saying before, funny thing. So you picked the only French guy in this meetup to talk about Napoleon. Well done, Jason. Yeah. So Napoleon, where to start? So I'm going to try, because I know that some people here expect a rant. I would not go for a rant. I would try to be as clear as possible. So I can see that a lot of people are complaining about the fact that it is definitely not historically accurate, but actually it's definitely a work of fiction, and I respect that. I kind of gave up on the the real biopic after 10 minutes into the movie, because definitely, if you study a bit of history about Napoleon in French class, you do a lot actually. Definitely, there are things that are definitely invented by the writer, so that's fine. I'm not going to complain much about that. The main problem, and I think we spoke about that on by WhatsApp with Alfonso, is the marketing campaign about this movie. The marketing campaign about this movie was definitely trying to sell this huge, epic biopic about Napoleon, showing how a great general he was, how a great conqueror he was, also how terrible dictator he was in a way, because he was an emperor, so let's face it, he was a dictator. And unfortunately, that's what he was sold. I was comparing it with Alexander by Oliver Stone, like 15 or 16 years ago, that I actually enjoyed. And it's not what we've been given. So I don't know if it was misleading intentionally by the studio, or it was, I don't know what happened. Because definitely this movie is about the personal life more than anything else about Napoleon, about his personal struggle and his personal relationship with his first wife, Josephine. That's fine, I guess. If you say properly, I guess that's fine to have a a movie like that. That being said, it's a bit boring to be honest at some point. Not that actually I don't like romance movies, but in my opinion, there was not much chemistry between the two actors, Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby. Joaquin Phoenix is an amazing actor. He's a genius, that's for sure. But for me, he's one of his weakest performances in his career because he's like the one face all the time. Whatever happens, he's on the battlefield, he's in his bedroom, doesn't matter, still the same face. And the part of the relationship with Josephine is literally at least 50% of the movie, and the movie is 2 hours and a half, so which is a long movie. And as I said, there's nothing much happening. The idea that Josephine is like the one thing that's made him going. I know again that it's a fiction, but it's ridiculous in my opinion. And unfortunately, I think that if you want to do it properly, do a TV show, do a mini series of 6 episodes, do the time needed to show both sides, show actually his personal life, which is interesting. He had also nephews and family, but he sends all these family members to rule different countries in Europe when he was conquering Europe, for example. That would be fun to see his nephew, who became later on after his death, actually an emperor himself in a way. A few decades later. I mean, there was so much more that you could do if you want to develop his personal life, but don't avoid talking about his exploits, his success, and his defeats on the battlefield. Because if you ask 95% of the people around this earth, what is the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about Napoleon? I can guarantee that 9 out of 10 will talk about the general and the conqueror, etc. And only 1 out of 10, perhaps, will talk about Josephine. So, yeah, I think it would have been better to actually to do something a bit complete, and not just a part of his life, especially not what happens in his bedrooms, which apparently is so important. But because who cares about what happens in his bedrooms and his sexual life? I mean, it's the section. I mean, sometimes I wonder actually this movie was supposed to be funny, because it was almost hilarious what in his personal life. I don't know exactly what is the genre of this movie. I don't know. So yeah, that's the end of my opinion.
Yeah, I did hear this was going to be an Apple 6-part series, and I think they're going to maybe release it. So I'm thinking if this was, I think then maybe they wanted to rush the theatrical cut. That maybe this is why it seems so disjointed from what I heard. But what did you feel, James? I mean, you saw this as well recently. What did you share Richard's opinion on it, or?
I'm trying now when I talk about films to sort of just go pros and cons, right? And I will say my pros list is a lot shorter than my cons list, so you can only be so fair to a film. Pros, I was actually I was kind of impressed by the scale and the spectacle of the battle scenes, although as Richard says, it's not really about that, and they're not a massive amount of the movie, but when you do get those scenes, they are really kind of thrilling. They do look really good, I think. I'll have to say though, at the start, I wasn't kind of very convinced by the whole world. Everything, rather than feeling. I mean, we've had historical films this year. We've had Oppenheimer, we've had Killers of the Flower Moon, and they both feel like they transport you back in time to those places. A large portion of this, I was just thinking, I'm just watching Joaquin Phoenix in a silly hat. And I think I think Richard's right. If you asked 9 out of 10 people, 9 out of 10 people would say that Napoleon, the Conqueror, is what they think of. 1 out of 10 might think of the relationship. I think if you asked Ridley Scott about Napoleon, he would just go, "It's all about the hat." And I do agree with Richard that, I mean, you weren't sure if this was a comedy. I'm sort of not sure. I think that it unintentionally maybe became one in the middle. There is a line that I'll WhatsApp it to you, Richard. I won't ruin it because I hate when people ruin like jokes, especially when there's one joke in the film. But there's a line that Joaquin Phoenix said that just made me burst out laughing. I wasn't not everybody laughed, but it was so over the top when he's sort of aggressive to someone, and he kind of looks like Harry Enfield playing Napoleon in a French and Saunders sketch a lot of the time. I agree with Richard that he's a great actor, but this is not his best performance. There was a story that I saw, and obviously I don't know if this is true, that he had a bit of a crisis on set, that he didn't know how to play this, and I think he just plays it as Joaquin Phoenix. It doesn't feel like a very consistent performance. I wasn't aware Josephine was a lot older than him in real life, but obviously because this is Hollywood, they wouldn't cast an older actress, an actress older than Joaquin Phoenix in the role because of the obvious sexism that we have in the world. But that kind of actually I think is a detriment, because understanding that she was older suddenly makes more sense of that relationship. And although we said a bit about, I think the biggest problem with this is it hasn't got a focus. When you think of like Oppenheimer, it's very focused on two particular timelines, isn't it? Killers of the Flower Moon is particularly focused on these people that were sort of doing these murderous things, and it's specifically focused on a couple of characters. This is obviously focused on Napoleon, but it's sort of all over the place. It's a bit about the war, and it's kind of like, then he did this, then he did this, then he did this, then he did this. And I don't feel those kind of biopics are really ever the best ones. Like at the end, I won't say exactly what it said, but it comes up with a title card at the end saying about certain things. And although it's interesting, I thought, but that's not what the film's been about. And it's not like it's a thing that suddenly they're undermining what the film's been about. It's just like, oh, we need a title card at the end, so we'll just put this up. And you sort of realize it's been a mess. Going back to a positive, so I'm going to kind of try and sandwich it a little bit. I mean, and maybe it's just because my expectations were on the floor. And I thought, it's 2.5 hours. I thought, why am I even going to see this? This is 2.5 hours. I could go and do something else in my life. It didn't drag as much as I thought, but I think that's almost like a good and a bad thing, because I think it was like, there's no focus, and it kind of it's like a film made for someone with no attention span. So it's like it cuts very quick, which often longer films don't do. So as soon as you're doing one thing, you're doing another thing, then you do another thing. So my expectations were on the floor. It wasn't as bad as I thought, although to be honest, once it got to 2 hours, I was not really paying much attention. And I will just leave it by saying as well, there's something really horrible that happens in the first 15 minutes of the film. And I sort of recoiled from the screen. And I was like, that's an alien Easter egg. And when we come back, everyone afterwards went, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. And I didn't think of it straight away. I was like, I think that's an alien Easter egg, that. But it's not worth it for that. Also, I will say it made me think of House of Gucci, which was a Ridley Scott film. And everyone said that Jared Leto performance is absolutely ridiculous. And it is. But actually, if you took that out, it would be a much more boring film. And I think this is almost like, I mean, this is not, it does. I don't even know the facts. Richard will know them much more than me. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be historically accurate, which a film like this probably should be, and it should be made by a Frenchman as well. It shouldn't be made by an Englishman. But I mean, there's sort of, in not taking itself seriously, it doesn't drag as much as you would think. So I think if you're going to see it maybe on the big screen for the spectacle of the battle scenes. But yeah, it's not going to be in my top 10 films of the year.
Disappointment all around there. Well, I think it's the same writer who's going to go and bring us Gladiator 2 next year. So who knows? Great, it's kind of like set the standard for what to expect there. But I think, hopefully they will bring out the Apple 6-hour miniseries, which I rumored this is really to be in its full form. But anyway, we'll see. Right. Okay, let's go on to another release which came a bit earlier in the month, and that was Disney's Marvel's basically. And this was quite a big, long gestating project. Noelle, you saw that. I saw that review, and Richard, you saw this as well. This is another nice parameter on what the state of Marvel movies or the MCU is right now. A lot of negative. I gotta say, going in, there was a lot of negative word of mouth online, so I wasn't expecting much. But what did you think going in, Noelle? You saw that, and
I didn't really know what to think, because whenever I hear negative things about these kinds of movies, whenever it's a woman, I never know if it's actual criticism or not. You never know what you're gonna get. So I kind of went in with, okay, I'm gonna think about this in the same way that I've thought about all Marvel movies since Endgame came out, basically, which is I'm not going in with high expectations, but I'd like to be entertained, and I was. This far exceeded my expectations. It's in my top 10 movies now. Every issue I have with Marvel movies does not apply here, which I like. One of them being the pacing. I like that the pacing's faster here. The CGI, it didn't seem like it was terrible because sometimes Marvel movies, they unfortunately seem to rush their poor CGI, individuals. But I thought the film was quite good. It kept flowing very well. I think the musical scene was, I don't want to say unnecessary, but it was a bit much. But apart from that, it flowed very well and it got to talking about kind of darker subject matter. You have these three superheroes and they have different, wants and needs, and one of them wants to save everyone in a scene and then is told that she can't because we can't save everyone. I wish they went more with that, some more serious elements, but a lot of people didn't like Brie Larson in the first movie and the other movies, but I think she's fine in all of them, especially with this one where we have the new actress who plays Miss Marvel because she's such a positive character and she helps bridge the gap between the more serious tone and then bringing some fun into it. And then the young girl Monica, who's now an adult, I liked the character. I thought she was very good because she's very like a normal person, I would say, thrust into a superhero movie. And then Miss Marvel's more like a Marvel fan in a Marvel movie, and then Captain Marvel's like any other character. So I think it was really good because it was different than some Marvel movies and it didn't have a lot of the issues most Marvel movies have, but I was thoroughly entertained. Most of the time when I watch a Marvel movie, the last third is not very good, even if the rest of the movie is quite good. And this was the exception to that, which I quite liked. I think this is the best movie to come out since the Spider-Man movie. So I give it a 7 out of 10.
All right. Richard, you saw this as well. What was your take on that?
Okay, 7 out of 10. Yep, actually, now I'm thinking, is it generous or yeah? Well, it's definitely a good surprise. I will agree with that. It's actually that I was expecting a disappointment, like every other Marvel movie and film over the last 2 years. No, I'm exaggerating. No, it was a decent movie. To be honest, even the first one was a decent movie. I don't care about all the things behind the scenes with Brie Larson, to be honest. I'm just trying to watch a movie and make an opinion by myself. And like the first one, this one was also decent. It just has all the Marvel cliche that we already know, all the humor for no reason sometimes. But yeah, it was all right. I actually got a bit emotional even in the end, which is a good sign, because it means I was invested in this movie. There were a lot of things that for me were completely out of place. Maybe not a lot, but at least 2 big scenes that I don't understand why they were there, to be honest. There was one scene that I see online that some people actually enjoyed, which is, I will not say more, but people will understand what I'm talking about, a scene with cats. And I really don't understand what people actually enjoyed. There's some people actually enjoyed that scene, I don't get it. Or I think it was completely stupid. But anyway, that's personal opinion. And
I
also,
like that the cat was in it more, though.
Yeah, well, you see, and also some kind of homage, I guess, to Bollywood. I don't know. I don't know if it was an homage to Bollywood or it was not intentional, but that's how I saw it. And I was thinking, okay, but if it's not an homage, it's just stupid. If it's an homage, yeah, meh. Now that being said, as I said, overall, I did enjoy the movie. I mean, the thing is, it is less than 2 hours, and that's good. That's actually a good thing. Unfortunately, like all the Marvel movies or TV shows, is that is you watch it, you forget about it. But honestly, that's the saddest thing I can say about this Marvel universe now, is that actually that it doesn't stick in your mind anymore.
Yeah.
It is no, I can't even name one big scene that I want to rewatch on YouTube when it's going to be on YouTube next month. I don't care. I just enjoyed an hour and 45 in my life, and that's it. Now I can move on. And I think that the fact that I don't care, and probably a lot of people don't care because the box office numbers, we might talk about it, is one of the worst in history of superhero movies, if not the worst. it is showing also, but not only as I said, the people don't care, but also I'm guessing sometimes I wonder actually if people behind the cameras care about the Marvel movies anymore.
I think part of the box office issue, I haven't seen an advertisement anywhere, right? And we live
True.
in London, so there's like billboards and such everywhere. Never saw an advert. I had no idea why. I hadn't seen a lack of advertising like this since like Andor.
That's
So
true.
I think that's a big part of it. And of course, the preconceived notions. I think maybe if they lent more on someone returning who everyone loved, that would work.
But that
Like
being said,
Miss Marvel was great.
I think Disney kind of destroyed this movie before its release. They released that movie on the same day of the Loki finale, which is a
Yeah.
big mistake, and it proves actually that they don't care. I'm saying they don't care about this movie. Loki finale was, by the way, amazing, but I don't know if we're gonna have time, maybe not, but on this meetup, but maybe one other one. But it was pretty great, to be honest. The finale, not the show, but the finale was great, and I think everybody was talking about it on social media before and after, and that's kind of hides the Marvels, I guess.
Yeah.
But and also now even I heard also that what's the name? Da Costa, the name of the directress, was actually involved in another project already and kind of not left the project in the middle, but almost actually wasn't part of the promotion of the movie. And I know there's a lot of signs that prove, in my opinion, that Disney and Marvel kind of, as I didn't care about the Marvels and say, okay, we have to release that thing. Let's release it as soon as possible. We know we're going to lose money. So now it's over already. So let's do it. And it's a bit sad because, as I said, there's a lot of potential in that movie. I think that Brie Larson is not that bad in that character. I don't care about all the things behind the scenes. I think as a character, she's all right. I think that the girl who plays Mrs. Marvel is actually a very funny character. I mean, she plays it very naturally. That's great. She's like us. She's enjoying being in the superhero world. The TV show was actually decent as well.
I like that she actually looks like a teenager as well, which helps.
Exactly.
Because half the time I'm like,
yeah, she's
Tom Holland kind of, but
30
she
years old
actually
playing a
passes as
15.
kid. Yeah. But I think
And
Disney
yeah,
has not
I
cared
think
about a lot of their releases. Same with Dial
yeah,
of Destiny. They just like chop everything up and then say, here you go. Very
that's a bit
sad. I'm not a fan.
unfair to the people actually because I think she cares. This actress, for example, this young actress cares about what she's doing, and I'm afraid actually that she's kind of destroying her own career by well, let's say actually, well, not the end. I mean, she's only like 16 or 17 years old, I guess, so it's not the end. But yeah, and to be fair, last thing, and then I give up, and I will see Andrew wants to talk. It's a bit sad that in the end, the only, or maybe the most talked about thing in this movie is the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
And that's actually a bad sign. When you have when everybody's focusing on the post-credit scene, you think, okay, that's definitely wrong. There is something that nobody cared about for 2 hours. So yeah, that's something wrong. Yeah. So yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, Andrew, did you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot because you said a bunch of things. I guess both of you and just trying to take it all in. I'll just start with a quick one, relatively. I guess it was Noel who kind of mentioned about the film not really doing as much with marketing. And part of the reason, and you can go into a whole other thing about this, so I won't, but that was maybe not intentional in Disney's part. Well, maybe it kind of was if you think about it, but it's because of the actors' strike. When actors are on strike, they don't promote struck work. And the actors' strike literally didn't end until the film release date, which meant that Disney had to rush the actors out to different locations at the last moment to just promote the film as much as possible. Iman Vellani, I guess the actor's name, Miss Marvel, did a surprise appearance at El Capitan Cinema in Hollywood, greeted fans. Brie Larson appeared on chat shows. And again, this was all done really, really last minute. And when you promote a film like this, you have to send the actors out weeks and weeks in advance, not last minute, but actor strike.
That makes sense. I forgot about the actor strike, so thank you for bringing that up.
But having said that, I've been thinking back to I guess maybe one of the last times we spoke, and I mentioned something, and you're talking about something on Marvel, and I mentioned like, oh yeah, this was addressed on Miss Marvel series, and it was like, but no one watched Miss Marvel series,
Yeah.
and I was the only one who watched it. It's like, no, I wasn't the only one who watched the Miss Marvel series, and I'm like, how could none of you have watched the Miss Marvel series? It was a pretty important, canonically, or was meant to be. And
Mhm.
then I realized something, and that is, and this applies only to the U.S., where a lot of these things come from. But in the U.S., and there's a point to this, so I'll get to it. Uh, Disney Plus is different than it
Mhm.
is outside the U.S.,
Mhm.
and by that I mean there's no star.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you think like a group like this and the demographics like this, you know, a lot of you probably watch Disney Plus. Yeah, you watch Star Wars and Marvel, but you also watch the star content.
Mhm.
If you didn't have the star content, would you still get Disney Plus?
I was about to leave it before I came here.
Yeah, so in the US, because there's no star, the people who get Disney Plus are people who have kids or adults who want to watch, for lack of a better way to put it, stereotypical Disney content.
Mhm.
I don't know how else to describe it, like, you know, animated or the Disney classics, whatever you want to
Mhm.
classify Disney classic, those types of films. Uh, I mean, yeah, you have people watch the Star Wars and the Marvel content, but it's not something where like, oh, I'm going to get Disney Plus just so I can get that and pay whatever money a month for the subscription. So because it's not something, I mean, still a lot of people that get it because you have people with kids. That's a lot of people, and I guess Disney adults or people watch the stereotypical content. Again, don't know what else to call it. That's still a lot of people, but there's still a lot of people that don't get it because there's no, you know, not like a group like this where, you know, people, again, I don't want to presume certain things, but people of a certain age who don't have kids, they probably wouldn't think to get Disney Plus in the US. So because of those reasons, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to see Disney Plus originals. And it doesn't just apply to Miss Marvel or even Marvel series in general. It just applies to anything that's original Disney Plus. They wouldn't get the streaming service. Maybe they would get Netflix or Amazon. This is the US, so they get Hulu, which is also owned by Disney, but they wouldn't necessarily think to get Disney Plus. Having said that, the irony is, I'll just try to be quicker about this. Miss Marvel is probably the one series they might have had the opportunity to see, and the reason is because of the again the actors and the writers strikes putting a pause on new content for broadcast television in the US, and there'd be less content. And so one of those networks is owned by Disney, that's ABC. And so as a way to have content for their network that they own over the air, ABC, and also as a way to promote something during the actors strike, they actually aired Miss Marvel on ABC back in August. So if anything, that's probably the one series that people might have had the opportunity to see, even if they didn't get Disney Plus, because they'd be like, well, I don't get Disney Plus. I don't even do streaming in general. Some people do that. But I would have been able to watch this one program because it's on ABC, and that's something people would get. Now that I've said all that, as for my own thoughts about the film, I wasn't really that crazy about it. I did like Miss Marvel. I did have some issues with, I'm talking about Miss Marvel, the series, not necessarily the character. I did like the Miss Marvel series. I did have some issues with the series that were similar to problems I had with the other Disney Plus Marvel, you know, that it felt things were getting rushed along a little too much. They didn't stick the landing, I guess is to use a phrase, for the final episode of the series. But I thought it was overall pretty all right. Addressed some real world issues, but also some, you know, some fun Marvel stuff. Uh, but the movie I just found like is very haphazard, and it took me a while to get into it because it's like, okay, now they're rushing this and they're rushing that, and then it's like okay, they're teleporting over here, then they're teleporting over here and here and here, and then like I can't even tell what's going on. And then finally, midway through, when things slow down, I like the interplay between the three main characters. Brie Larson, Aman Vellani, I guess the actress who plays Monica Rambeau. Can't remember. I can't remember her name. Some to my head.
Paris.
Yes, because I've seen her in other stuff too. She's good. So all three of them were good. I just kind of felt like the first half just kind of felt very rushed. They were kind of rushing from scene to scene. It was very hard to follow. And I can only imagine people who didn't watch Miss Marvel or any of this other stuff, they'd be completely lost. As for the musical planet, I thought it was kind of cute. I mean, Brie Larson is a singer in real life. We've seen some of her other stuff. So it's kind of a cast show off kind of thing because they wanted to show off her singing talents. Makes me think of another thing she did recently, but that's but as far as the other parts of the film, I mean, the post-credit scenes I thought were okay. There were, I guess, two of them. Well, actually, no, one mid-credit scene and then one scene at the end, which kind of sets up for I don't know if I want to do spoilers, but they set up for other things, and I just kind of got worried that they maybe won't get around to doing those other things because of this film's poor box office performance. So, I mean, there's other thoughts I have on this film, but overall, I just wasn't really that crazy about it. I did like the actors. I thought they did a decent job given the circumstances. But I'm kind of wondering, some of the strengths of Marvel, will they be addressed? I know because of the labor strikes, there's not as much MCU content next year. It's being pushed back to next year. There is other Marvel content from Sony and non-MCU stuff on Disney Plus. But as a little side note, in the US right now, we have Dancing with the Stars, which is the US equivalent of Strictly Come Dancing, dancing reality show competition. And one of the competitors is Xochitl Gomez, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, the America Chavez actress. So she's doing well in that reality competition, but I'm like wondering what's happening to her character, because regardless of what you thought of her performance in the Doctor Strange sequel, I would have liked to see more with that character. And they were supposed to do more with that character, but the pandemic kind of screwed everything up in terms of release date schedules, which brings me to, I guess it'll be my final point. I know that people want to say stuff. Is that the reason that Disney and Marvel are doing things the way they are is they kind of have to release things in a certain order in terms of the continuity. And so I guess it makes me, in a weird way, nostalgic for the 2010s when there was that split between Marvel Studios and Marvel Entertainment, which wasn't really a good thing in some ways because people will watch these things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and wonder, when would they address these things? And they never were going to because of the split in real life. But people don't want to do stuff if they have to do a lot of homework. I mean, it's a lot to just talk about, something like The Boys, and do people have to watch Gen B to watch season 4 of The Boys? I think they kind of do. But that's fine. That's just 2 shows. Imagine if you have to watch all these other series on Disney Plus and then watch the movies. There's enough to watch all the movies in the earlier phases. If you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you watch the former Netflix shows like The Defenders and all that, Cloak and Dagger, Marvel's Runaways, all those. I watched all those. They were great. Well, some better than others, but if they never got addressed in the films, fine. I still could just enjoy them, but people didn't feel obligated to watch them. So I think it's just a lot to make people watch stuff or go out of the way to watch stuff and get the streaming service that they're not going to want to get otherwise. And how the other streaming services like Netflix, it's just a lot of extra homework. So
it kind of does feel. Sure. The film was actually quite fun. Actually, I got nothing against that film. It's pretty good, but It is a bit. I think Marvel now is a bit of a victim of its own success when you've got so much of a backlog to get on, where people just don't want to do the homework, as you say, and they're not going to. So I'm like, one bad film tends to sink. Well, it's that brand name, Marvel. You get a bad film, I'm not going to see the next Marvel. And I think it's been reflected by the poor box office in this movie. No fault of that movie itself. I think the leads are great, especially the youngest Marvel. She's quite a highlight star in it, but I don't think it matters anymore, unfortunately. So maybe it's time how it has come. Right, thanks. Well, another long-standing IP resurfaced, and that was the Hunger Games prequel. That was the Ballad of Songs and Snakes. So, who rushed to the cinema to go see this? I think Richard, you did. James, Alfonso, did you? What did you? You got your hot ticket in your hands and you sat down, and what did you think? What? Is it everything it promised to be?
It was. I had heard that it was better than expected, and it was when I saw it. It was a nice prequel to the main franchise, like the Adventures of Jon Snow, if you will, and Lucy Gray. Never call her Lucy, always Lucy Gray. Yeah, I like the political themes. It had good political themes. It had good action with the Hunger Games, with less technology, but still a lot of action and a lot of deaths. But it was interestingly structured because the Hunger Games were not at the end of the film, but more like the middle. And I thought it was, and when we left the Hunger Games, it was like, now what? What's gonna happen? But yeah, it was a solid movie outside of any franchise. Let's say it could be it's kind of a standalone. It could be completely a standalone film by itself and work perfectly fine, and it kind of does. You don't need to have watched anything of the other movies to really enjoy this film. And the actors, I mean, you have Viola Davis, you have Peter Dinklage, Jason Schwartzman was also quite enjoyable. he kind of relished his character. And Viola Davis, she was really having a good time in that role of the baddie of the film, biggest baddie, I guess. I also enjoyed both Tom Blyth and Rachel Zegler as the main characters, of the young people, Snow and Lucy Gray. And I think that maybe my standout among the young cast was I think it's Jos Andres Rivera, this guy who was also, for example, in the Steven Spielberg West Side Story, and is going to be playing in the new American crime series that is one of these, like there was one about O.J. Simpson. It's called O.J. Simpson. Well, there's a new one about a crime with two main young actors playing the main roles, and it's Jos Andres Rivera and Patrick Schwarzenegger, the son of the Arnold. And I think that's gonna be also interesting. I think it's Aaron Hernandez, and he's playing Jos Andres is playing Aaron Hernandez. Well, anyway, I'm diverging from the main thing. So yeah, really like a solid film, and it's showing at the US box office. It's the Disney film, The Wish, has been a letdown, and meanwhile the Hunger Games is, let's say, overperforming or staying at number one. So it shows that when you do quality, it wins the day.
Yeah, seems to done well. But Richard, you saw this as well. What was your take on that?
Yeah. kind of agree with most of the things that Alfonso said. The idea, but actually, it was a nice surprise. The original movies, let's say, I enjoyed a lot the first one back then. Kind of was disappointed by the sequels more and more, actually. And that movie was a good surprise. I mean, what I mean is that except for a few dialogues, which were a bit stupid, he wasn't trying too much to do some fan service, and he was trying, in my opinion, to be its own movie, which is a good thing. I thought that the chemistry, again, talk about work chemistry again, about the two main actors was pretty good. And that guy who plays what is his name? You said Jon Snow, Alfonso. I think
It's
Coriolanus. No,
Coriolanus, yeah.
Yeah, I think said young Snow.
Yeah,
The
young
Adventures
Snow,
of
young
young
Snow.
Snow, like young Indiana Jones.
Sorry,
Not Jon Snow.
Jon Snow. Yeah,
young.
Sorry.
It's Tom Blyth. That's the
Okay.
name of the guy playing young
Snow. Sorry,
Snow.
but I never heard of that guy before, and I thought it was pretty great, to be honest. Again, we're gonna try to avoid spoilers, although we know who is gonna be ending and who's gonna be. I mean, in the end, it's gonna be a villain, obviously. But the third part, Alfonso was mentioning that actually the Hunger Games, the games themselves are in the middle of the movie, and the third part was for me almost a different movie, and it was maybe the best part of the thing, kind of a psychological, almost or thriller. Maybe it's a strong word, but almost. And I really like that part. I also liked what Alfonso was saying about the fact that it's the whole first two parts about the Hunger Games themselves, and it felt a little dirty in a good way, like the first movie. In a way that actually it was showing the first two parts was showing the how rough it is, how difficult it is to live in a society where you have nothing, literally, and it's a post-war. There are post-war scenes. Even the introduction, now I think about it, the first scene was actually surprisingly good and surprisingly for a grown-up audience, in my opinion. And it was it was a good sign already, showing actually how difficult it is to live, as I said, in a dictatorship, or kind of the beginning of dictatorship after a war and a revolution actually that failed. And but yeah, all these things were interesting. The first movie was a bit similar, in my opinion, showing actually how it is to live in a poor society where only the 1% owns everything. And so, yeah, these parts that were missing maybe in the sequels back in the day, because they were focusing so much in the sequels, in my opinion, on the teenagers' love stories and things like that, unfortunately. In that case, there is definitely romance involved. I'm not saying that, but fortunately, they managed to balance it out and have everything come together in a good way. So yeah, very good surprise, this movie. And I really, really hope, like Alfonso was saying, that it will remain a standalone movie, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, if it's done well in the box office, probably not. You'll probably get a whole
No,
series.
please, no.
Well,
Please,
no, I think though the thing is with this, because I had the same concern. I was like, do I really need to see another three? Because everything's got to be a trilogy. And sorry, guys, I do blame Star Wars for that. Everything's got to be a trilogy. But once you get to the end of this, I mean, I'm thinking now, is there a way? But it kind of I don't think there is another story to tell. I mean, if they do, they can choose to do it, and I don't think it will be very good. But I think it really does work as a one-off prequel. It's quite long, actually. I've just realised it's probably longer than Napoleon, but I think the one that I would need to revisit all of them. I think all of the original Hunger Games to kind of refresh my memory. I remember really liking the first one. They did that thing with Mockingjay, which was the third book where, and I blame Harry Potter for this, where they had to split everything into two films, didn't they? So the last book, you split it into two films. And I think the director has since said that that was a mistake. They should have just released Mockingjay as one longer film. And I think there was a discussion about this, but it would have been weird because I don't know where you would have made that split. Like I think Alfonso said, the Hunger Games is in the middle, so you'd have no Hunger Games in one film or the other. So it wouldn't really work just cutting it in two. And I think I'm trying now not to complain about lengths of films. Much as I didn't like Avatar 2, I saw something from James Cameron where he said people will complain about a long film, but they'll sit and binge a series on the sofa for 5 hours. That's very true. And actually, if a film's good, I don't care about the length. The only time that I'm complaining about the length is when the film isn't a very good film. So with this, I think everything Richard said, it takes place in a very gritty world. I think because it's a known quantity now, as the BBFC call it, they can get away with quite a lot of violence at a PG-13 certificate. And the way they often do this is by cutting away on impact. But the actual things that are being depicted are still very brutal and very but they're part of that world. It's a brutal world, but it feels like we're more back in the past. Everything's a bit more primitive, a bit more dirty. Rachel Zegler, I've only really seen her, I think, in West Side Story. I think she's a really good choice for this because obviously, if you remember Jennifer Lawrence's character in the originals, sung these songs, and Jennifer Lawrence herself said that she's not a singer and she doesn't like having to do that stuff. In other films, she's had to do that as well. But here we've got someone who is a singer, and so she's depicted at like these sort of nights where she's a country singer and she's quite aggressive with the locals who are getting boozy and throwing things on stage. And yeah, I just thought it was a pleasant surprise because I didn't really have much expectation in this at all. But and I think unlike the Marvels, which I was somewhere in the middle, there was good and bad things about that film. But seeing this after the Marvels, I suddenly realized the Marvels isn't really about anything, and it probably should have been about meeting your idols or something with Ms. Marvel. I think that Kamala Khan, that would have been the way to sort of make the film about that. The original Captain Marvel is about someone trying to figure out who they are because they've lost their memory and things like that. And Ms. Marvel, which I did watch, was sort of about sort of a coming of age story of a young thing. But this is about stuff. I think the Hunger Games, it's about society and politics and love and revenge, and it's got a lot of things going on in it. So yeah, it was entertaining.
Totally
There's
right.
some good, fun battle scenes in it as well. So
I think you're totally right, Richard, when you said the Marvels wasn't about anything, and that was what I missed in that film. Like it felt like just adventures and hijinks of three characters, but it didn't feel like there was anything meaty to grab. Yeah,
I think you need a bit of that, don't you? Because even like, although I kept saying I think it's better than the recent editions, I keep forgetting that we have had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I mean, that's a Marvel film about vivisection. That's a hell of a thing to make your Marvel film about. And it does it, and I think, of course the universe was very good as well, and that's about stuff. But yeah, I think for me it was fun, the Marvels, but you do need to have it be about something, I think, to make it worthwhile. To make that the thing, whoever, I can't remember, sorry, who said it, but it might have been Richard, that if you forget a film, I think that's when it's not about anything. So films that stick with you are because they're about something. But it depends what sort of film you're making, I suppose. But I thought this was sort of about stuff, and it was a fun blockbuster at the same time. So it sort of proves that you can do both those things. And who knows, you can have a standalone film without having 3 sequels. Let's see next year if that's still the case.
Heresy. Well, yes. Well, from that, as I think audiences' tastes are slowly beginning to change of this whole era of superheroes, and they do want films about something. And we've had a bit of those actually this year. One of them is Martin Scorsese's teaming up with Leonardo DiCaprio, and that's Killers of the Flower Moon. Who saw that? James and Andrew. What did you both think? A true life depiction, obviously, of an event, I think. Loosely?
Yeah, so the story of the Osage murders in the 1920s, a story that I knew nothing about. and it seems that a lot of people didn't know anything about. So it's good to have shone a light on this story. Yeah, I sort of didn't know. To be honest, from the trailer as well, I thought this might be like a revenge story. There's a certain line, and I think maybe there was deliberate misdirection in the trailer. I'm not sure, but it's the story of Leonardo DiCaprio. He's back from war in the 1920s, goes to stay with his uncle, and the Osage people who live in a sort of area of the US where they were the richest people on earth because of oil that was discovered there at the time. The sort of richest people per capita, I think it says at the start. And basically, Leonardo DiCaprio says he wants to marry for money, which people did a long time ago. People still do. He's back from war, and he's sort of a very poor person. He sort of pursues Lily Gladstone's character, who is a sage woman who's very wealthy. He's her driver, and sort of thinking where to stop with the plot spoilers on this. But yeah, so they get married and they're quite happy. But it sort of turns out that he is a he mugs people for money. I think it sort of starts from that, and we think, oh well, he's not very. And then more and more things start to be discovered as you go on. The attention to detail in the film, the sort of world that it takes you back into, it does really feel like being transported. Sadly, the rest of you aren't time travelers, so you don't know what it's like to travel in time. Me and Jason do, and we're going to talk about Doctor Who later. But sometimes films like this, the nearest you can get is sort of seeing this world depicted, and it really does feel like everything is like being taken back 100 years. The score, I can't remember the name of the guy who did the score, but I think it's a very good score, and he passed away before the film was released. I think he's probably going to be a shoo-in for best score at the Oscars next year. Cinematography is wonderful. Again, with the time on this, it's 3 hours 20, and it didn't feel like that to me. And I even went to see it twice actually at cinema. And it really does take you into this sort of very uneasy world. I never really used to get Martin Scorsese as a director when I was younger, because I always used to think, well, I don't like these people. I just don't like these people. So why would I want to watch them in a film for 2 hours, let alone 3.5 hours? But I mean, now if we say toxic masculinity in 2023, everybody knows what that is. Everybody knows what toxic masculinity is. There wasn't a word for that when I was growing up. There wasn't a phrase. And really, everything that Scorsese portrays in his films, he is portraying toxic masculinity and saying this is a bad thing. I think if this film was perhaps made by Tarantino, I think Tarantino always thinks his characters are cool. I don't think you're ever meant to feel that in a Scorsese film, because I did afterwards have this moment where I was like, well, maybe they should have focused more on other characters. And I completely see where people are coming from on that. And I think that film should probably be made. There probably should be another version of this story made by an Osage director, and sort of focusing more on other characters. But this is very much about Leonardo DiCaprio's very weak man who cannot stand up to his very evil uncle, and that ultimately leads to his undoing and to these terrible things that happen around him. And that's always been the case. I mean, nobody, if you know, like the film Taxi Driver, nobody wants to spend some time with Travis Bickle, do they? But there is a series called Voir, produced by David Fincher, and it's on Netflix, and it's like 20-minute video essays. And the third episode, I think, is called But I Don't Like Him. And it's a film critic talking about Lawrence of Arabia, which I haven't seen, and I would like to get around to watching on Netflix. And he keeps praising the film, saying how amazing it is and how amazing the lead performance is, and then saying, but I don't like him, about the lead character, and sort of arguing that it's important to have. Well, I think we're so used to seeing cinema as a sort of aspirational thing. We're so used to seeing heroes, superheroes, and sort of the hero's journey, and that's an important part of cinema. It's all about balance. But he argues that it's very important to have this other side of sort of seeing very evil and flawed characters and trying to work out some of the psychology around that, maybe. And I think this film, yeah, it really does that really well. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say Brendan Fraser's in it. Brendan Fraser's in it. He's got a little cameo towards the end. And I won't say what that is, but I think the scenes that he is in, there was some stuff online about had he pitched his performance wrong. I didn't think that at all. I think it works perfectly for what that character turns out to be. I think Lily Gladstone. I mean, I think Greta Lee probably should get the Best Actress award at the Oscars next year for Past Lives because it's an amazing performance. But nobody really knows who she is, and that's not how the Oscars work. I mean, you could say that maybe about Lily Gladstone, but I think maybe Lily Gladstone will get this, and I would be very happy if she did. I've seen some very odd things online where people are sort of saying that she's very underwritten, but she should definitely get the Best Actress award, which sort of seems like I sort of get where they're coming from, but that sort of like seems to be taken away from her performance. I think it's a very good performance. And I've seen people as well criticize again. Someone said to me, I've not seen the film, but I've heard this. And I was like, well, maybe you should watch the film because I think the way that the relationship between Leonardo DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone is portrayed, particularly early on, you've got to feel that betrayal with her of what this guy is doing. I think if that was, well, why can't she see what that guy's doing? You know, he seems to be this really nice guy, and I think he's almost convinced himself he is. But as the film goes on, he does more and more terrible things, and they get worse and worse and worse to a point where you suddenly go, you've got no moral high ground left, mate. You've got nothing, no redeeming factor. It just all crumbles away by the end of the film. I was really surprised. I was not expecting this to be one of my favorite films of the year. It's not in my top 5. Probably is going to be in my top 10 of the year. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Someone's going to say I hate it now. That's fine. Different opinions are available.
Okay. Richard, think you liked, hated, loved this one?
I'm gonna be quick. I know. I think it was a very good movie, but I think that I think I joked about it after watching it that Martin Scorsese should learn how to do 2-hour movies again, because I don't know why he needs to do this marathon of 3.5 or 4-hour long movies. I mean, this story could have been told in a shorter time and also in a different way. And that it doesn't take anything from the movie. I think, yeah, the direction is amazing, the cinematography is amazing, the acting James was mentioning from the main female actress, the main male actor. Well done, yeah. But still, honestly, I felt the 3.5 hours, to be honest. I felt it. Because for me, the pacing, actually not in the second and third part, but I remember actually the first part, I thought the kind of the introduction, let's say, of the words and the different characters, I think it took very, very long time, and I was thinking, okay, where are we going here? And then when it starts actually when you understand that what kind of character DiCaprio is playing, and when you understand the whole thing behind the killings, etc., then yeah, it kind of becomes, I guess, more interesting. Oh, but yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah, the pacing wasn't that great in my opinion. It can be a masterpiece technically, but still, I think it's important actually that you actually get your audience invested from the moment the movie starts until the moment it ends. And that's a problem. I mean, remember what was the name of the 4-hour long movie on Netflix that The Irishman. The Irishman. That was awful. I mean, it's an amazing movie.
I didn't like The Irishman,
but it was so long. I mean, I'm sorry, but yeah, it's a problem. It's a real problem. And I understand that he wants to tell. Maybe it's also because he was trying to be respectful to the story and save everything, etc. But yeah, I think yeah, it's not a good job on that part overall, but doesn't take anything from what James was saying.
That's right. Different opinions are available.
Yeah, I kind of like, well, not a fan of The Irishman as well. So, but thanks to Netflix actually, who kind of put the money up for The Irishman, and probably, I guessing for this as well. So this is how we can't get.
This is Apple TV. Do you know what? I've only
It's
just thought of that. And The Irishman sort of come out during the pandemic, so it didn't get I mean, it obviously got released in a couple of theaters to make it eligible for the Oscars and that stuff, but it didn't have a wide release. I think it, like Apple TV, do the 45-day window like Disney do now. And it has done. I mean, it is a 3-hour 20 movie as well, so it's not everyone's going to want to go and watch it. And controversially, in the UK, View Cinemas were playing it with. Well, not controversially, in my opinion. I think it's perfectly sensible. But they were putting in an interval, 10-minute interval, so people could go to the loo in the middle. And when this come out, the distributor in the UK said, "Well, that's actually not part of the deal. You shouldn't be doing that." And I do wonder where that would sit. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio reads books in this film. I think what they should have done is have a bit where he goes, "I'm just going to sit and read a book." And he reads a book for 10 minutes and it comes up going, "You can go to the loo now," and has like a countdown. So if you want to stay in the film, you can. Like a little bit like an adventure game, right? But it's continued. It's still showing at my cinema. I think this 45-day window's up, so it's on Apple TV now. But I think not in the US, but overseas, it's kind of outperformed what they were expecting. But I also think with cost of living, people like a long movie because it's value for money. I genuinely think that's part of it now.
I think we've been moving to this event cinema. Like they choose one or two big events that they go to, and then that's it. They don't go see anything else. I guess we had Oppenheimer and Barbie, and then I think people are looking for the mood for a big, nice winter movie, but maybe not so. Or maybe Napoleon should have been it, but maybe we got something to come. Okay.
No one has spoken about this kind of the thing about the perspective of the native people that were murdered. That it seems like it's a movie that is too much from Leonardo's perspective, right? Like it doesn't.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
It's and it's also, you kind of feel. I mean, I felt all the time like these guys, the Indians, the Native Americans, were a little bit aloof, naive, like they didn't get at all what was happening, and I was all the time wondering, was it really like that? Did they really not get it? To me, it was like a horror movie. Like it was so clear to me. Maybe because I don't know, because I was watching it from the outside, but it was so clear, and it felt like they were these like pure beings that are being killed, and I don't know. It felt like I was missing a little bit their perspective on the whole thing, and it was like represented by the character of the wife. Like she always had this look like, I know it all. I know the universe. I know what is happening. And then acted like she knew everything about Leonardo DiCaprio, about everything about his persona. Anyhow.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that's a good point, actually. I'm hearing a lot of I was expecting a bit more. It was supposed to be as their story, so I was expecting a lot of that. But I'm from the periphery of the marketing. As you say, it's all buzzwords on who was in it and the names, I suppose. But that's how you sell a movie, I guess. Right. Andrew, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to backtrack. I guess something that James and maybe some other people were talking about in terms of like, well, first I wanted to mention that in terms of their release strategy, I think initially Apple wanted to do this in sort of like a more limited release, at least within the US, and then have it go to streaming not long afterwards, whatever. But then what actually happened is because, again, the actors strike, and what was supposed to happen was the Dune sequel or Dune 2, whatever, was supposed to come out October 20th. But because, again, actors can't promote struck work, all that stuff, the studio pushed it back to next year. Again, Dune 2 was finished, but they just wanted the actors to be able to promote that film, so they pushed it back to the spring. And so that meant October 20th was suddenly open, and particular IMAX cinemas, at least in the US, were open. They were like, what are we going to be showing now? So that allowed Apple to use this as an opportunity to release this in wide release, at least in the US, and not just like limited and streaming. So that was actually to their benefit to have them do that and take advantage of this open slot in the release date calendar that wasn't really there before. I mean, they were going to release this film anyway, but not to the extent that they wound up doing. Um, as far as terms of the film itself, because it's been a while, I've seen some Oscar baity films since then. So thinking back, I mean, I thought it was a decent film. I wasn't finding it too long. I do feel that they were focusing on certain things that weren't addressed in the film as much, like who's killing these other indigenous, members of the Osage tribe. They were focusing on like, certain people, but yeah, there's some other people you see like getting killed on screen, and then you're like, but who's behind those killings? And maybe they addressed it a little bit, but I felt like there was a lot more that they could have addressed that they showed on screen. And then they also mentioned the Tulsa race riots on top of that, uh, going on in the city of Tulsa in Oklahoma, where a number of African Americans were killed there. And that's something that's mentioned very briefly in the film. So it seems like they were trying to tackle a whole bunch of other things, as well as focusing on the story of Leonardo DiCaprio and his uncle, played by Robert De Niro, and their story. Um, and then made me think about the whole, wolf in sheep's clothing type thing, without going too much into detail for that. You haven't seen the film, but I thought it was all right, decent film. There were some name actors who didn't get a whole lot of screen time. I mean, you mentioned Brendan Fraser. I knew he was going to be in the film, but that's just something they mentioned in the marketing, like the marketing materials. It's a very small scene. Also, Jesse Plemons, who appears later in the film, and when he shows up, he becomes more prominent. But he doesn't show up until like well late in the film. It's 3 hours long. Um, so it's a good cast. Um, but it's a lot to take in because there's a lot of material, a lot of history there, not just about towards the Native American community, but against other groups, and in terms of the oil and getting access to it. Because that's what's driving the whole plot of the movie is having access to these oil wells in Oklahoma, in the U.S. state of Oklahoma. So it's definitely a lot to take in, but I thought it was a decent film. I thought Lily Gladstone did a good job, but there's so much other Oscar bait stuff that's been released lately that I'm kind of like, that this film was also good, and this film was also good. And, it's trying to balance everything out. So, but that's a whole other thing. So,
Thanks for that. Right. I think another release that was actually simultaneous Netflix and cinema release over here, and that was another auteur director, that was David Fincher, teaming up with Michael Fassbender in The Killer. I mean, Michael Fassbender plays basically a wronged assassin, a very systematic one, but kind of portrays how he kind of like, it's almost like a revenge story, really. You saw The Killer. What did you think of this, James? Did you see this?
I don't know why I put my hand up to talk about this. Yeah, I mean, I actually saw it at cinema. I think it came out a couple of days before it was on Netflix, and I think it carries the weight of being a David Fincher film, so your expectation is very high. Obviously, Zodiac, Gone Girl, Fight Club, Seven, Social Network are amazing, amazing films. So I mean, starting on the pros, it's great to see Michael Fassbender back. I think he was on doing a sort of, like, he was in a small short retirement or something. He was taking a bit of a break. So I haven't seen him in anything for a while. And he's always good. The character he plays, a hitman, he just listens. The only thing he listens to is the Smiths. So you get the brilliant catalogue of the Smiths, and that my absolute favorite song of all time is the last song that plays over the credits. But I'm not gonna let that sway me in my review of the rest of the film. And I did like the episodic nature of it as well. So it's almost like little short. They do sort of have a through line, but they're sort of broken into short stories. There's a particular one where he goes to someone's house and he has to get past a doll. That sequence, that sort of short story within, I think, is the highlight of the film. It's very tense and it's very well done. That sequence. It's sort of, and the other thing I would say, I think maybe after watching the Jill Dando Netflix documentary, Jill Dando was a very famous TV presenter in the UK in the 90s for our international friends here. And she was found, she was shot on a doorstep in 1999, I think it was, and there was a documentary on her recently. In this, the where he's kind of getting away, I really like that section as well. It reminded me of Drive, where you always think of, I always just think of getaway drivers as trying to outrun the cops. You know, they're trying to go really fast. And the start sequence of Drive with Ryan Gosling is him actually slowing down and pulling over and kind of trying to blend into background. I really like that when he's trying to sort of get away from doing a hit. That stuff I thought was really interesting. And a little bit different from what I'd seen before. I mean, I think when this started, I thought I'm going to hate this film. Like the first sequence, and I wouldn't. I'm sort of. It's very early on, so I don't know whether to spoil it, but I won't. I'll try not to spoil it. He's talking to himself over and over again. I think I got used to that by the end of the film. But at the start, he's talking to himself for ages, and he has a clear shot on somebody, very clear shot, and he leaves it for such a long time and then cocks it up in a way where you go, is this guy meant to be an idiot then? Is that what I'm watching? And I don't think he is. It's like, I don't get, it's not like he's even waiting. It's not like I've got to wait for this. He has a clear shot to do something in a private situation and he leaves it and then just goes, oh, like that and shoot. It's like, you're like, what, this guy's a professional? I don't think so. This guy's a moron. But like from there, it sort of got a little bit better because I did start the film thinking, this is just nonsense. Tilda Swinton appears in a sequence, which I feel like if you're going to have Tilda Swinton, she should be in the final story in the film, but she's kind of like sort of middle end of the film in a sequence there, and then it goes off and does some other things, which by that point you think we've had the high point of the film. So I mean, it was all right. It was fine. It's one of those where I've kind of forgotten about it already. It's just kind of there. It's definitely. I mean, actually, in a lesser director, you might go, "Oh, this is all right," but I think with David Fincher, you just go, "Yeah, this really isn't in your top movies," and maybe it's not even in the middle. I mean, it's if you like hitman films, it's all right, but I mean, if you want a violent sort of thriller, Equalizer 3 was a little bit better, I'd say.
Yeah.
But
Surprising, yeah.
it's what it is.
I think it just does set itself up for disappointment because of the pedigree of the actor and the direction you got there. That's probably its biggest hurdle. And again, like we mentioned before, this film it really isn't about anything, as in because he's already fully formed. He's systematic. He doesn't really have a learning curve or anything like that.
No, that's a very good point. Actually, you're using an actor like Michael Fassbender, and this could have been anybody. This could have just been a generic action thing because he doesn't go on any kind of. He keeps saying the same mantra to himself, and I think that's kind of the point, possibly, that by the end of the film you think that thing he's saying to himself, I don't know. Actually, maybe that is the learning, that he's trying to learn something and can't, and that's what makes him a little bit more human. But it does. To be honest, though, I'm kind of trying to attach meaning to the film now that I'm not even sure was there.
It is, yeah. It does leave you like I've got you. Naturally, you do want to attach some kind of narrative thread or some growth or insight into it, but it just doesn't let you. And I guess it's purposeful, but again, yeah.
And the voiceover is annoying. It's not Blade Runner level, Blade Runner theatrical cut annoying. I know I'd say that. I always say that, and I kind of like some of the voiceover in the theatrical Blade Runner. But the voiceover in this is more annoying, actually.
Again, the voiceover is basically just a mantra, really, and it's doesn't really change, except that he just seems to semi-retire, but then he probably reluctantly, and that's it. I mean, it stops. But yeah, I agree. I think Tilda Swinton is highlighted there again. She's the most very episodic in nature, and she pops in it, and maybe she should have come at the end where it's more of a reflection of her life. But alas, it's not. But yes, I kind of feel wanting on that. Honestly. Right. Moving on. Right. Next. Anatomy of a Fall. Coming out some quite good word of mouth. Richard, you saw this. Could you just give us a bit about this? I'm not really too familiar with this title.
So a French movie, but if I'm not mistaken, won the Palme d'Or last year. So in French, Anatomie d'une chute, Anatomy of a Fall, released internationally. I just wanted to see it because it was the winner of the Palme d'Or, and literally that's the only reason why I went to see it. And what a great movie it was! Honestly, I don't know who said that actually, but to make a movie, you just need a good idea, and that's because the movie is called Anatomy of a Fall, and that's why it is. And they made a movie of 2 hours and a half about this, and I was talking about earlier about the fact that 2 hours and a half could be long when you watch Napoleon or Killers of the Flower Moon. In that case, it wasn't long at all. So yeah, quickly, it's like let's call it a murder mystery. It's a small family in the Alps, close to Grenoble in France, and you have father who's French, if I'm not mistaken. They live in a chalet, so in the Alps. You have the mother who is German. So obviously, by the way, the movie is spoken 50% of the time in English, even in the original version. And they have and they have a son. Sorry, who is blind, by the way. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And who is blind. The movie starts, and that would be all we're gonna say, like the first 10 minutes. We start with the mother, who is a writer, right? And she's being interviewed by a student. The father is in the attic, listening to some music, composing or whatever. And the son goes with the dog that he's using, obviously, because he's blind, just for a walk. We've seen cuts back and forth between the son with his dog and the mother doing an interview. The student leaves after the interview ends. The student leaves the house, pass by the son, say hi, just a little hi. The son comes back, and he finds his father dead in front of the house. And with his head almost, with a big injury on his head, with blood everywhere. And that's the movie how it starts, literally, after 5-10 minutes. Is that actually that's going to be a movie about, did he kill himself? Or did the mother kill her husband? And it becomes like a procedural, I don't know the word, but it's like a trial in a tribunal for 2 hours with the two versions fighting each other. Obviously, a friend of the mother, who is a lawyer, trying to defend her. Sorry, and someone else trying to prove that actually she's guilty. Sorry, and in the middle of all of this is the kid, who actually is in the end, it might be actually the only one who can help with the case, and it becomes obviously a family drama / crime drama, and it became quite fascinating because obviously you learn all the backstory of the couple, and you put yourself in the shoes, obviously, of everyone else, trying to figure out, is this woman actually innocent, or did she do it? I will not talk about the ending, obviously. But more and more importantly, you see actually the kid is more important than you think, and in a way, you also put yourself in his shoes and how difficult it must be for him. And yeah, it's I said it's really, you are really invested in the story. I use that word a lot tonight. You're really invested in the story. You really want to know what's going on, and you feel for the characters. Honestly, especially the mother. Great performance by this actress, and let's hope, because we talked about this in the chat, that unfortunately this movie will not be representing France at the Oscars, which is a terrible mistake by the French Academy. But let's hope actually that at least this actress will not be forgotten, because yeah, she's doing an amazing performance. Every time she's on screen, she's killing it. And another person that actually I never heard of before watching this movie. So yeah, I recommend highly this movie.
James,
yeah, I thought it was really good. I mean, Richard, did you say then it's not going to be in the contention for best international feature?
Yeah, it's another movie that has been so okay. So it's we try to put politics out of this this meetup, this podcast.
That's never worked in the past, but yeah,
there is a huge rumor going out in France. There's a good chance that it's because the director, the woman actually directed this movie, was very vocal when she received the Palme d'Or in Cannes about the French government and about demonstrations, etc. And she was obviously very criticizing. I mean, the French government.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah.
And and the French Academy, the committee actually has a lot of links with the French government, deciding who's going to represent the country, etc. So yeah, it's not official what I'm saying, but there's a lot of rumors going around.
There's a lot of rumor about that. Yeah, I mean, that seems a bit of an own goal to do that, because it is a really good movie, and there's always that thing sometimes. I mean, I think the Palme d'Or the year before was Triangle of Sadness, that I thought was really good. Terrible name for a movie, but I really like that film. And this, I mean, a lot of it is in the courtroom, and I think I was with about 5 other people when I watched this, and there was a moment where I thought, is this going to be a bit too dry for everybody else? Because you either like a courtroom drama or you don't. You know, it's one of those things. If you kind of feel like you're in a courtroom and you like that sort of stuff, and you're invested in the mystery. And I thought, I better get out, and I'm the only person who's enjoyed this. And actually, people seem to have enjoyed it more than I did. Those courtroom scenes are really good as well, because it is entirely, I just had to check, it's entirely French funded. But I didn't feel that I was watching a French film, because you're right, it's about 50-50. And what they do in the courtroom scenes is the barristers are talking in French, and the witness, or the main character played by Sandra Hüller, starts and then says, my French isn't very good, can I go into English? Because is she German, but she's married to an Englishman, or she knows English, or they're married, and that's the one language that they can both speak. So she does all her testimony in English. So you're only ever reading subtitles for half the time, which really helps, I think, from a lazy English person like me, because you're only having to read half it, and you feel more the sort of immediacy of it. But at the heart of it, you've got this very interesting kind of what has happened to this guy who's been found dead, and there's only certain scenarios you think that can be. I think as it goes on as well, it turns out to be more about the difficulty of maintaining relationships sometimes for people, and the complexities of being an adult and that kind of stuff. And that's where I think towards the end, the payoff, what I think once you realize not just what has happened, but why it's happened, really works. Because the film would kind of fall apart even if you enjoyed it for 2.5 hours. If you got to the end and went, oh right, okay, it's either not lived up to expectation with the reveal, or I mean, I know I'm maybe overselling it now, but if you went something completely left the field and went, haha, it's a Star Wars crossover and it was Obi-Wan killed him, something out of the blue, you'd be like, well, what the hell? It by the end of it, you go, of course it was always that. Of course it was always that. But it takes you along on that journey, and it does it really well. There's a moment in the courtroom as well where they play some audio, and because it's audio, you don't know what's happened, and that you sort of see it in flashback. And when it cuts to a certain moment, you just hear the audio and you see the jurors going, sort of not really understanding what's happening in the audio. And by the end of it, they never reveal what has actually happened. I think that's really good as well. There's a moment we didn't talk about with the Hunger Games at the end where something is left very ambiguous, and they stick to it. They don't go, right, we must tell you exactly what's happened, because otherwise they let you sort of think it could be one way or the other. And I kind of like that. I don't feel that happens very much in films now. It's like we need to know every single detail and we need to have everything filled in for us. But I kind of really like that moment. That sort of really stuck out for me. It's got a really random, like, jazz version of a 50 Cent song at the start, which I was like, is this the original song that 50 Cent sampled for PIMP? No, they're just playing a really random, and it plays throughout the film more than you would expect in flashback and stuff. But yeah, really, there's not been many sort of courtroom crimey type dramas, and I think that's sort of the second half of the movie. The other thing is there's a character who becomes her lawyer, but it's one of her old friends, isn't it? Is it a college friend or something? And she seems to get on with him better than she did her husband. She seems to have a connection with him. There's a bit in the trailer where she's saying, I didn't kill him. And he says, but that's not the point. He's kind of like, I'm just here to represent you. I'm just trying to get a not guilty verdict for you. I'm not interested in that. Yeah, one of the best films probably of the year, I think.
Yeah.
Really good.
Thanks for that. Thanks. And Andrew, you've got some releases that will be heading our way in the next year. Andrew.
I don't know if they've been released in the UK yet, but they're pretty good. So I just wanted to mention them.
And Andrew gets everything before we do. So
yeah, I guess because of Oscar rules, so they have to be released by a certain date in order to be eligible, but not necessarily through the whole US, just somewhere in the US, generally where the Academy members live. That's all. But anyway, the films I've seen, one is the Priscilla Presley biopic, simply called Priscilla, and that's her story. It's not a movie about Elvis Presley. It's a movie about someone he was married to. I mean, it's her story. Elvis is a major character, but it's really from her perspective. Okay. Yeah, so I guess it has to be eligible for Oscars and all that, so it has to be released already here. Anyway, that's a whole other story. So that film, Priscilla, it's about Priscilla Beaulieu. I believe that's her maiden name. Before she became Priscilla Presley. Yes, directed by Sofia Coppola. Good film. Again, I just want to mention again, it's her story. I say this because in order to get the rights to use Elvis Presley music in a film, you have to get permission from his estate or whatever that is. And Sofia Coppola and her team weren't allowed to use his music for the film, which is kind of, maybe an unusual choice for a lot of people to do an Elvis film without his music, but it's not, again, not his story. So his songs get mentioned, but you don't hear his music. You hear music by other artists, but not his music. They didn't get the rights to it. So it's kind of an interesting thing to do that. Again, it wasn't the filmmaker's decision to do that. It was just the way it worked out. Still a good film. Just wanted to put that out there in terms of, if we're expecting certain things going into a film about that family. So you see things, again, her perspective, and you realize Elvis wasn't the greatest guy in the world. May sound like, why is that a big deal? But because here's the thing, people put him up on a pedestal, and you still see, stuff in his background and all, but from her perspective, he was kind of a jerk at times. And I'm not going to give away spoilers. I know it's based on a true story, but I thought it was a pretty decent film. And the actress who plays Priscilla, Kylene Spani, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she does a good job playing Priscilla from the age of, I think, 14 till her late 20s. So, and she manages to pull it off. So, and another film I saw that was good was The Holdovers. I think that's also something that's going to be talked about come Oscar time. Not sure about any kind of international release date because it's not something that's like a big blockbuster, but it's a film about some people who are okay. That's a UK release date. It's some people who are kind of staying back at a boarding school, not university level, but more like high school level, I guess, secondary school. And so they're at a boarding school. They're away from their families, but then they go back to their families during, Christmas time. But some people don't get an opportunity to do that. So those people are kind of referred to as the holdovers. And one of the teachers at the school has to stay behind with them. In this case, that teacher is played by Paul Giamatti. And it's a really good film. There's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of issues that are dealt with. One of the staff at the school is, I guess, the kitchen staff. The person runs the kitchen. You find out about her backstory or her story going to the film, and she's a really good performance by Divine Randolph. Also, one of the students who stands out, can't remember the actor's name, but he's really good. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I don't want to give away spoilers, but it's a really good film, and you should check it out when it gets released. I guess January 19th in the UK. And then I saw another film just very, very recently called American Fiction. Also something that's talked about during Oscars. I guess it's going to be released before the end of the year in the US to be eligible for that awards and all. It's Jeffrey Wright as a university professor who is trying to write a book. And again, I don't want to say too much more because of spoilers, but it is trying to give commentary about race in the US. Oh, wow, February 2nd. Okay. Because I guess the idea is that stories about people of African American background kind of get pigeonholed or put into different categories like, oh, they live in the hood or lower income, or issues about slavery and racism. And those are all important stories, but the idea is that there's a lot more stories you could do with where the character just happens to be of African American background and not necessarily put it into one of those specific categories. So you may have seen some of the trailers for it. I'll say that the movie itself is a little bit more serious. There are humorous moments, satirical moments, but particularly early on in the film, some stuff happens that's a little bit more serious nature. So just keep that in mind going in, regardless of if you've seen the trailer or whatever. So those are some good films that I saw that were good. There is stuff at the cinema that's really good. You mentioned some of it, and then I mentioned some of it. So it's not just the blockbusters, which can be good too. I'm just saying that there's more variety than that. So.
Thanks, Andrew, for that. Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining. I think that's quite a good roundup of what we had the last month or so. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this film and TV review.com episode. Catch the latest film and TV reviews, together with regular episode content from the world of film and TV every week. See you soon. Would you like to reach our film and TV review podcast audience? Do you have a product or service of interest to film and TV home consumers or followers of the entertainment industry? Have a film or show production to publicize? For affordable price plans for all budgets, get in touch and find out about our introductory advertising options. Reach our audience of film and TV viewers and visit our site contact page at filmandtvreview.com, or you can email us at business@filmandtvreview.com. Reach out today.